so much. Thank you so much. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to CEC District 28's February 2nd, 2023. You remember, we're in February already. It just started, and we're already in February. 2023, our calendar and business meeting. Always a safe space, always a wonderful space where we uplift voices, especially the voiceless. And we are so happy to have all of you on board tonight. We try to keep on time so that way we respect time, because it's good for accountability. We're so happy to have all of you here tonight. We have a very good stack today. We have fair student funding. Many of you have been emailing and texting and calling about, hey, when is the formula going to be revealed? When is the presentation for fair student funding? It is today. And then you will have a chance to ask questions. Before we get started, we're going to be asking, let me just make sure Elena is here. Okay. So we'll be asking, Latifa, can you do it for us today? Do the roll call? I have the list if you want me to do it.
Okay, President Vijay Ramjatan.
I'm here.
First Vice President Ted Chang. I'm sorry, Barbara Williams.
She's here, but she can't answer, right?
Yeah. Second Vice President Ted Chang.
Here.
Treasurer Lu Zhao.
Here.
Recording Secretary Elena Amanova. I believe she put a message that she's having a problem getting into the meeting.
Yes.
So she's trying to get into the Zoom. Member Latifa Lewis, I'm here. Member Simone Dunbar.
I'm here.
Member Rajwinder Kaur.
She's excused.
Member Cassandra Alexander.
I'm here.
Member, who did I miss?
No one.
I think that's it. Oh, Member Shaliza Dean. I know I missed
Sorry.
somebody. Sorry. My apologies.
Listen, it's all good.
I'm out of practice.
No problem.
Shaliza Dean is here, of course. And Miss Dean, since we miss you, we're gonna make it up. Can you please make a little note about the chat, please, Miss Dean? Go for it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. As you know by now, our chat features as such. We have the right, be respectful of our chat feature, and we have the right to close it down if it becomes inappropriate. And if you need to speak when we have a question, you're going to be putting the word speak in, and we'll be doing all our questions at the end of our meeting. And good night.
Don't leave though. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you so much, Miss Dean. Yes, folks, here we are. So happy to all of you are joining. More people are joining, and we always have members passing in, passing out. It's coming through, and we're so happy today. We have Councilwoman, the Honorable Lynn Schulman, who stopped by to our meeting, and we'll give her a platform to say hello. Councilwoman.
So thank you. I actually have another meeting and I had a couple of minutes free time and I wanted to come up and say hello to everybody. I'm very excited to be here. VJ is amazing. And I just want to update folks. I recently went to 3 schools in the district to give them hydroponic planting kits so they can learn about urban planning. And I went with Dr. Tate. We went to PS 54, PS 144, and PS 99. And so the kids were just so amazed and so astonished that you can grow plants without light. So so they're learning urban planning. And as part of that, they're learning how to grow food and everything else that there are so they got the kits. There's a curriculum that is part of it. Sunworks is the organization. New York One did a piece on it actually, which aired on Around the Boroughs. And we can send you the link. So that you can share it with everybody. And they interviewed a couple of the kids, which was amazing. They talked about what they want to be when they get older. And so anyway, there are other schools where the kids grow things to the point where they have food and they give them to a food bank. So it's just amazing, and they can grow food for themselves or for others. And we're going to come back after the curriculum and after they grow things, and we're going to give them certificates and all of that. So this is just, we're going to try to expand the program this year. It's never been done in my council district. So that's why we want to bring this to the kids in the schools. So that's amazing. The other thing is we've been calling all the schools. I just want to let everybody know my office has been calling to see what your capital needs are because we're going through the budget process now. So we're doing that as well. Jonathan Boucher, I want to introduce, is on the call here. He's going to stay when I leave. He's my chief of staff. So, and he can put his information in the chat. And so, I'm just so excited. I went to the Winter Festival at PS 99, all the kids dressed up in tuxes and gowns. It was really great. So that was exciting. And so, we're trying to do what we can to make sure that the kids in our district have the resources so that they can get a great education. So I just wanted to say hello. I have to go off for another meeting, but my chief of staff is here. Anytime anybody wants to contact my office, please do, or contact me, and VJ and I have been in touch as well. So, and we're working with VJ on trying to coordinate the legislative breakfast too for CEC28.
Yes, yes, yes. It's always wonderful. It's always great to have, one of the things we want to establish with D28 and set a model with is that our council members, our elected officials, they're not strangers to who we are. They are part and parcel of this district. They are part of the fabric of the very base of who we are as a community, and they're equal stakeholders. And one of the things you just said, capital plans, right? It is important because we can say all that we want and what we would like to achieve. We have the money, we can do it. The schools can do it. And they can't go back, right? But Councilman Lynn Schulman, thank you so much for always being a partner so far with us since you became elected. You have been a pioneer in really setting the standard really higher. And I know I called you and I spoke to you about, partnering with us to do the legislative breakfast for our district. And that was one of the big pluses. You said, yes, how can I help? You are a partner with us. We are a partner with you. And please always stop by whenever you can. We always love to
I
hear
want
from
to.
you.
I love CEC28. And like I said, it's great. The participants are great. I want to thank everybody here for being a part of this because our kids only get one chance at a good education and we're all a part of that. So we want to make sure that that happens. Oh, and I also, this sort of has something to do with the schools. We're going to figure out what, but today I was excited because I introduced a bill to create the first citywide diabetes reduction plan for the entire city. We're going to get the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene to come up with a plan so that we can reduce diabetes, but we also want to make sure that we have lessons for kids in the schools too, because there are lots of kids that we're hearing about that have weight issues, that have food issues, that, and we want to be able to teach them where they are. So we're going to be rolling a number of things out. So we'll keep you posted.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. Thank you so much for all that you do in the district. I know you're here. Please put your information in the chat and we'll be in touch.
Bye, guys.
Thank you so much. See you soon.
You. Bye.
See you soon. Thank you. And that's what it's about. It's about building, long-lasting, compelling partnerships and collaborating efforts. That's what we do as a district, as a CEC, and our superintendent is all about this too. Okay, so we have another quick announcement because these people have 10 other meetings, but I'm happy that they do come to our meeting and make it the time to come. So we have Community Board Chair Sherry Algredo. She wants to make a quick announcement. So at this point in time, we'll ask Sherry to please make a quick announcement, and then we'll get into our program that we have on the schedule.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Vijay, who's my brother from another mother, my Trini brother, and Barbara here. I just wanted to speak quickly. I started out in the CEC 10 years ago on CEC27. I spent 4 years, 2 years as a borough president appointee, and I joined my community board. Being on the CEC, it's a great platform if you're going to head into different direction. It's a great place to be. I know CEC, the applications are out. I decided to apply one day and my life changed because I decided to become involved in the Education Council. So I want to say that even though I'm here to promote community board, I'll always promote the CEC. It's a great platform. Parents, you want to apply. 4 years later, after joining Community Board 9, I became the Community Board Chairperson. We have applications that's open for Community Board right now. We also have an Education Committee. That's how I met Vijay and Barbara and the other team, working with them on collaborated efforts. I also learned a lot. I stole a lot of Vijay's idea, which I still do. And I want to just encourage everyone to apply. You could go on the Borough President website and you can apply. The deadline for application is Thursday, February 16th. Community boards play an important advisory role. They hold monthly meetings. They hold hearings about city budget, land use, municipal service delivery, and many more things. So that's all I wanted to say, that we encourage everyone to, you can be a member of the CEC and also the community board as well. So I just wanted to encourage everyone, apply for the CEC and apply for your community board as well. Get involved, make a difference. Thank you, Vijay.
And thank you for making a difference as the first female to chair that community board ever on Women's History Month. That was the time that happened. So we're empowering you and empowering each
Not
other.
first female, we had other first Indo-Caribbean woman.
Oh, there it is. Sorry about that. Okay. But we're equally proud of you. Thank you so much, Sherry, for stopping by, and always come by and invite all your members to the CEC, our monthly meeting. Thank you so much. Folks, happy Lunar New Year, right? So I'm wearing Natifa, who is wearing red and a nice, beautiful outfit. She inspired me to go find a red scarf and put it on also to celebrate Happy Lunar New Year. For all who celebrate, and for all who don't celebrate, still happy Lunar New Year. We should all celebrate each other. It's a festive, happy month, and find a nice, comfortable space where you can celebrate Lunar New Year.
And happy Black History Month. We're 2 days in.
2 days in, happy Black History Month. Next week, I'll put on something else, something different, a new scarf. And also, my friends, if you want to speak later on, and if you have any questions about fiscal year 23 fair student funding, please write the word speak in the chat feature, and then we'll call your name in the order in which you have listed your name. Simone, I don't see Elena in this here. She's here, perfect, she is here. So Elena, you are here. So Elena will be taking your names down as you put your name to speak. And you don't have to speak only about the budget. You can speak about anything, any concerns you have. But if you have any questions or comments, put your word speak in there, and then we'll call you in the order. Elected official representatives, if you are here and you want to speak and bring greetings on behalf of your elected office or introduce yourself to the community, please put your word speak, and we'll call you also. And then you can say who you are, where you are from, etc., and we'll do so. Dr. Pate, our amazing superintendent for our district. She is no other than a person who leads with passion and fire. And we are so lucky to have you as our superintendent in our district. Without further ado, Dr. Pate, it's all yours.
So good evening, everyone. This goes both ways. I am every day in every way proud to work alongside the leaders of this amazing community. Every single one of you here, we all pick up the part of the lift that we have to, and we make it happen. And that's why District 28 is such a special place to live, to learn, and to grow. And tonight we are going to, I'm actually going to skip sort of our normal district presentation because the Fair Student Funding presentation is quite long. I'll encourage you to go ahead and get, a cup of water on the side because we are going to have a conversation about how we are funded and how we use that and allocate that funding. And then we're going to talk a little bit about some other budget allocation concerns. And so it's a real pleasure to be here with you all. The district team who is here, our principals are here, our president of our President's Council, co-presidents are here. I'm so happy to see everyone in the room, and we're going to get started now. And so I'm going to share my screen with you all. Look at that in one shot, in one shot. Let's see if I can't make it a presentation. Hang tight. Everyone's used to this. It takes a minute. And voila, there we are. And so I want to welcome everyone to the annual school budgets engagement session. Of course, I am your superintendent, Dr. Pate, and I'm happy to be here with our budget representative, our budget team. This is like one of the original warrior leaders in our district, Naomi Alexander. Thank you so much for joining and being a part of this conversation. She is the one who supports our schools tirelessly, along with Brenda Trejo. We're so very thankful for you being here with us tonight. And so we're I'm going to just go ahead and jump right in. So, every spring, the Panel for Education Policy, the PEP, votes on the Department of Education's budget allocation formula for the coming fiscal year. In preparation for this event, superintendents and borough-based support staff present the Department of Education's proposed fair student funding. And you'll hear me say FSF, FSF. That is fair student funding, the budget allocation. And so today is the sharing and anticipation for the 2024 school year budget allocation. And so we are charged to make this presentation to our community at large, along with our citywide education councils. The purpose of today's presentation is to review the DOE's budget and allocation formula, to review fair student funding and the proposed changes for fiscal year 2024, which aligns with the 2023-24 school year. This presentation marks a new approach on how New York City Public Schools is conducting community engagement around our school budgets and our proposed changes to the fair student funding formula. Our goal is to increase our transparency and ensuring that you, as critical community stakeholders, are made aware of how schools are funded and made aware of the resources available to you to better understand your individual school budgets. Our new approach is a change that was one of a few recommendations made by the Fair Student Funding Working Group, which was convened in July of 2022 at the request of the Chancellor. The Fair Student Funding Working Group worked over the course of 4 months in partnership with national school finance experts and our own central finance team to deeply understand the current Fair Student Funding formula, to look at New York City school demographics and make recommendations for changes to the formula. The working group included a wide range of stakeholders, including CEC members, PEP members, union leaders, advocates, parents, and elected officials. The working group published a report in November of 2022 to make recommendations to the Chancellor for changes to the formula, which he considered and determined a few recommendations to move forward with. We will be discussing those changes in this presentation shortly. In addition to recommendations to change the formula, the working group also asked that we work intentionally to better engage the community about school budgeting, the fair student funding formula, and how money to schools is allocated within this formula. This presentation marks a shift in our approach and demonstrates our commitment to the recommendations of the working group to focus on our transparency and community engagement. I appreciate you all joining this meeting tonight, and we're going to dive right into the presentation. Now, let's go to our agenda. It's 4 little points, but it packs a punch. Today, I'm going to be discussing 3 main topics. And so that is sharing an overview of this year's overall New York City Public Schools budget. 2, providing a detailed explanation of the fair student funding formula. And 3, discussing the proposed changes to the fair student formula for the 23-24 school year. If you have questions during the presentation, I'm asking you to, I'm going to ask you to direct those questions to me in the chat. So where possible, please write your question in the chat. We're going to capture those questions. We will have team members ready to respond to your questions, and questions that they are not able to respond to tonight during the presentation will be collected and shared with New York City Public Schools team, who will then respond, and I will share those back to you via our CEC. So you'll get answers to all of your questions. Additionally, the intention of this session is to collect public comments on our proposed changes. We ask that if you have specific feedback on the proposed changes to the Fair Student Funding formula, that you please feel free to share that feedback with budget public comments at schools.nyc.gov. I'm going to ask one of our team members to put that link, put that email address into the chat. It is budget public comments at schools.nyc.gov. Our New York City Public Schools team will be taking public comments received at this email address into consideration in the coming weeks. And one final note about the presentation. While I will be providing an overview of our overall New York City Public Schools budget and our district budget, I will not be reviewing our individual school budgets. Those are accessible on our public website. And I just put a slide up that will show you the path. So here's what I'm going to ask you to do. Go ahead and take a screenshot. Oh, sorry. Go ahead and take a screenshot of this slide so that you can have all the power that you need in order to look up your individual school's budget. That is a public document, and you have a right to view how the money is being spent in your school. I'm giving it a few seconds so you can capture it. Okay. So now I'm going to provide an overview of our overall budget and where the funding comes from. Our total budget for the 22-23 school year is $37.6 billion with a B, billion dollars, or about $31,000 per student in our system. New York City provides most of our funding. For the 22-23 school year, the city contributed $20 billion or 54% of our total budget. Most of our funding from the city comes from what we call city tax levy dollars. City tax levy dollars. City tax levy funds are drawn from local taxes, including property taxes, sales taxes, and personal income taxes. That is why our income tax is so high. Oh my goodness. Every year, the mayor proposes the amount of city tax levy funding we get, and the city council must pass that budget into law. $13 billion or 36% comes from New York State funding. New York State is our second largest source of funding. For the 22-23 school year, the state will contribute $13 billion or 36% of our total budget. Every year, the governor proposes the amount of state funding that we will get, mainly based on the number and types of students enrolled in our schools. And then the state legislature must pass the budget into law. Funding generally comes from income and corporate taxes, as well as property and sales taxes. And finally, the federal funding comprises a total of $4 billion of funding to our schools. The federal government is the third largest source of funding. The federal government gets its funding mainly from income taxes. So every year, Congress proposes a budget and the president must sign the budget into law. The Every Student Succeeds Act, also called ESSA, provides the rules for allocating most of the federal funding we received. So for the 22-23 school year, the federal government will contribute $2 billion or 5% of our total budget, as well as an additional $2 billion in temporary federal stimulus funds. In the previous slide, we covered an overview of where New York City Public Schools receives its funding from. And now we're going to shift into how that funding is spent in our schools and across our system. The largest proportion of our budget is allocated towards K-12 schools instruction. We allocate $15.1 billion or 46% of our overall budget annually to support our schools, including health and school climate initiatives, special education, and other operating expenses. Most of the instructional dollars, that's over $15 billion per year, are controlled at the school level. That is what you will find in your individual school budget. Within our budget, we have mandated costs that must be covered annually, including employee benefits, pension, and debts, as well as state mandated payments to charter schools, non-public, and contract schools. We allocate $2 billion to support early childhood across the city. Finally, our superintendent, field offices, and central offices comprise just 2% of our overall budget. K-12 allocations are all dollars given directly to district schools, in addition to associated fringe and pension costs, under the oversight of principals and superintendents. School budgets are used for all instructional expenses at the DOE. $15.1 billion in school budgets pays for costs including salaries and benefits for classroom teachers, classroom paraprofessionals, principals, assistant principals, deans, and other classroom and school-based staff. This also includes funding for textbooks, computers, materials, and supplies. The school operations section, you see that section there? It's the blue. That section pays for non-instructional services that students receive. The $4.3 billion is used to pay for costs including free breakfast and lunch available to all children, bus routes, loan payments on buildings, new construction and renovation. This is similar to mortgage payments. Non-public and contract schools payments covers schools and programs that educate New York City students, but are not directly run by New York City Department of Education. The $2 billion includes charters, students with disabilities attending specialized schools, supplemental services to students attending non-public schools, employee benefits, pensions, and debts. This $10 billion pays for health care and other employee benefits, pension payments for staff, debt payments on loans for school construction and upgrades. So this is a pie that is split a lot of different ways. And I just want to remind everyone that we are talking about K through 12. So that includes every school in our district. That's how this is the total money we receive and how I'm sorry, that's the total money and that's how it gets broken up across our system. We've not yet come to our district, but now we have. Now we're going to look at the financial breakdown for our district, District 28. Again, this does not cover the breakdown by schools. You can find that on the New York City Public Schools website by following the directions that we shared at the start of the session. Remember, you go to schools.nyc.gov and you follow the steps. Step 1, you choose a school. Step 2, you select the Reports tab. Step 3, you click Budget and Finances. And step 4, you click Reports. And that's going to give you the Fair Student Funding overview and details, the Galaxy allocation, the budget summary, and the expenditure report. That is specifically where money is allocated and how it gets spent. So that's important to remember. As you can see in District 28, we have a $390 million budget across 51 pre-K to 12 schools, serving 34,466 students, including pre-K centers, of course. This does not include our District 75, since those programs are not funded through Fair Student Funding. Naomi, do you want to talk a little bit about the funding for District 75?
So, good evening, everyone. Let me put on my camera. Sorry about that. So basically, District 75, it's separate for our students with disabilities. So that is why they have a separate funding, and it's separate and apart from our regular District 28 schools. And that's just why they give you this breakdown in this matter.
Thank you very much. I also took an opportunity to sip a little tea.
Tea, right?
Thank you for that. I appreciate you. So school budgets are comprised of a mix of fair student funding and other funding sources. Remember, we said that earlier. Remember the three buckets, right? New York City, New York State, and federal government. Our pre-K centers are not funded with fair student funding. So who decides how the money is spent at the school level? This is a very big deal. If I had the opportunity, I would have a quiz and you can pop up and give me the answer. I don't hear anyone, so I'm going to go ahead and tell you. Once this funding is in place within school budgets, principals are responsible for the funds allocated to schools and have a great deal of flexibility in how they spend the funding. These choices are made in partnership with the school leadership team, or SLT, as principals and SLTs create the school's comprehensive education plan. They identify school specific instructional needs and priorities and align the school budget to this plan. Principals work with their SLTs to create the school's budget in alignment to the goals and instructional priorities outlined in the CEP. Superintendents like myself supervise all principals in our district through this process and must approve all school budgets and their alignment within the school's CEP. Let me tell you, that is an incredibly intense opportunity to take a look at how well we match our budgeting to our goals and the needs of schools. And so it's a big time of year that really is such a very important conversation to have. We will now go into more depth about what fair student funding actually is. So fair student funding, sometimes referred to as FSF, is the largest funding stream that we provide to schools. As discussed on the previous slides, the allocation of fair student funding provided to schools is based on the number of students enrolled at each school and the specific needs of those students. We make these calculations based on our fair student funding formula, which calculates how we distribute this overall pot of money to schools. Within the formula, students with needs that require more support receive more funding in alignment with those needs. As indicated in previous slides, fair student funding is a specific proportion of school budgets. In fact, these funds account for nearly 2/3 of most K-12 New York City public school budgets. In many cases, schools also receive funding from other funding streams, including federal funding streams like Title I, Title III, IDA, which is funding focused on special education, or other targeted allocations for specific initiatives. These pots make up the remaining funding within the overall school budgets. As a note, charter schools, 3K, pre-K, and D75 programs are funded outside of fair student funding. Additionally, mandated IEP related services, including speech teachers, occupational therapists, and physical therapists, as well as one-to-one paraprofessionals, are also funded outside of fair student funding formula. Again, the money provided to schools from the fair student funding allocation provides principals with significant flexibility, working in partnership with their SLT to utilize the funding to design instructional programs tailored to the needs of their students within the school community. Funding from the FSF allocation provides for each school's basic instructional program and classroom services. This funding can be used to pay for classroom teachers, including arts, gym, and cluster teachers at the elementary level, as well as school leadership, guidance counselors, and social workers and administrators and pupil support. FSF allocation can pay for after-school programs, tutoring and intervention programs, as well as teacher absence coverage and classroom resources and materials. So there's a lot that happens and as pulled from fair student funding. So let's talk about how it works. Here's a more detailed look at how we calculate fair student funding and how it gets used. I want to use this opportunity to further clarify some of what we have already discussed today. Throughout this presentation, we have been talking about fair student funding and the Fair Student Funding formula. When we say fair student funding, we are talking about the money that is allocated to K through 12 schools from this large pot, not including pre-K centers or District 75 schools or programs. This year, the fair student funding pot is $7 billion. The fair student formula is the method by which we decide how to allocate that funding to schools. This slide outlines the formula and how we utilize the formula to calculate the total amount of fair student funding for each school will receive. There is a note in my slide deck that says, remember PEMDAS. Everyone remember PEMDAS? The order of operations matter. So you remember you do things in the parentheses. I'm not going to go through PEMDAS. I just thought that was really funny because sometimes we say when we were in school as children, when will I ever use this? You're using it right now. Thank a teacher. Now I'm going to walk you through how we utilize the formula to determine how much fair student funding each school receives and how we determine that specific dollar amount. Off the top, each school receives a foundational amount of $225,000 annually. Okay? This is a baseline funding allocation that is provided to every school, regardless of the number of students that the school serves. Next, we add funding for collective bargaining related costs, which is contractual pay increases for school staff. Then we calculate the remainder of the fair student funding by allocating a base amount for each student. That's called per capita, and then allocating additional funding based on each student's identified educational needs and instructional programs. It is in this part of the formula that we take into account the weights. Remember that word, weights, that we have been referring to throughout the presentation. On the next slide, we're going to dive more deeply into the weights that we utilize to determine the specific dollar amount that we allocate per student, so that you have a clear understanding of what goes into this part of the formula. I also want to pause here to reiterate that within this formula, we take the time to examine the individual needs of each student to determine funding allocations. We make these individualized calculations for each student, aligned to their individual and specific need and educational program, to determine how much funding would be provided to that school for each student. Now, to more deeply understand the current weights that we use to calculate that part of the formula from the previous slide. I hope you can all see this. On this slide are the fair student funding weights for the current school year. That is this school year, 2022-23, or what we call FY, fiscal year 23. Here you see the different types of weights that students can be eligible to receive based on their instructional needs or academic programs. Again, these are the weights for this current year. In previous slides, we mentioned that the Fair Student Funding Working Group has made recommendations for changes to the Fair Student Funding formula. This is the area where they made recommendations for changes. Later in this presentation, we will show a very similar chart that indicates the weight changes that were proposed for next school year 23-24, fiscal year 24. Now I will explain the different weights on this slide. For 22-23, the base weight of 1 was equal to approximately 4,197 per capita. This per capita is adjusted annually to reflect changes to the citywide average teacher salary. The basic grade weight is allocated to schools for all students on their audited October 31st register. I want to remind you that we talked about October 31st last year when we had a discussion about chronic absenteeism. Remember, we said we have to ensure that every student is in school and they are accounted for. And October 31st is a big attendance accounting day. So the basic grade weight is allocated to schools for all students on their audited October 31st register and is calculated by considering instructional programming requirements by student grade level with very distinct weights for K-5, 6 through 8, and 9 through 12. And as a former middle school principal, you see that middle school gets a slightly higher weight. I love middle school. So why does 6-8 have a heavier weight than high school grade bands? The elementary school weight is set at the primary weight of 1.00, and it serves as the starting point for the calculation of all the subsequent fair student funding weights. Middle school students carry the largest weight due to the evidence of large drop off in student achievement and greater average social emotional needs, as well as higher teacher cost factors. At middle school, as middle school teachers are entitled to a preparation period and a professional or administrative activity period. 1.4 middle school teachers are needed to cover each class compared to 1.2 for elementary schools classes. High school students in grade 9 through 12 are weighted at a slightly higher level than grades K through 5 for several reasons. Older students tend to have higher costs for non-personnel, such as more costly science materials. They often take electives that break into smaller classes, and their schools often require more administrative personnel. This approach is consistent with our historical funding practices and with practices in other cities. Funding for academic intervention, AIS, is determined by student academic performance when they enter a school, using test scores from their prior year. For schools where students do not have incoming test scores, like in the lower grades, such as before students began taking tests, or if they do not have prior test scores, we provide funding based on a student's poverty level. Funding for special education is determined by the percentage of time students spend receiving special education services. For example, we have one weight for students receiving services for less than 20% of their week. Another weight funding students receiving part-time services for up to 59% of their week. And a final weight for students receiving full-time special education services. These special education weights are then also broken out by student grade level with the specific weighing value, again, determined based on the cost of providing the instructional program. We also provide supplemental funding that supports students who have been declassified as special education students. This funding supports students in their first year transitioning out of special education services through the post-IEP transitional support weight. Funding for English language learners, ELLs, is allocated based on students' grade level, reflecting mandated instructional services, including bilingual and ENL instructional programming. Additionally, we have weights for former Ls who have achieved proficiency within the past 2 years, indicated using the state designated term commanding. We also provide funding for ELLs with students, for ELL students with interrupted formal education. Those are called SIFE status. Students with this classification receive their respective L weight in addition to a SIFE weight. Remember, students with interrupted formal education, SIFE. We also have another category of weights for portfolio high schools. These weights are provided to schools based on the number of students who are involved in these academic programs within each high school. Career and technical weights are different, have different tiers based on the type of career preparation. Programs that require more resources such as nursing, agriculture, and veterinary, aviation technology, automotive, culinary, etc., require industry-specific equipment, higher level of consumable supplies and materials, and student internship requires that they are student internship requirements that are integral to the program of study and highly specialized and ongoing industry training for teachers have higher weights to support that instructional programming. There are also separate weights for students in specialized academic or specialized audition schools and for students attending transfer schools. Only students attending high schools are eligible for these weights. So we just took a look at all of the weights that are calculated that students could be eligible to receive within the Fair Student Funding formula allocation. I also shared that as we are calculating that formula for each student, we take into account the instructional needs of each individual student within the school as we determine school's overall budget allocation. In this slide, we're going to take a look at how each student's calculation is determined. The different types of weights are indicated by color in the upper right corner of the slide. You all see it? Great. In order to determine the weight for each student, we evaluate their eligibility for the weight based on data in New York City public school systems that store key information about students. Now we are going to walk you through the process for how fair student funding would be allocated for two students, Sam and Alex, through the Fair Student Funding formula. Sam and Alex are two students who attend an elementary school in our district. The orange section shows the grade weight that they first receive because they are elementary school students. They are both entitled to the K2 through 5 grade weight of 1.0, again, shown in the graph in orange. You see that? If they were middle school students, they would have a weight of 1.08. And if they were high school students, they would receive a weight of 1.03. So both Sam and Alex are classified as English language learners, ELLs, shown in green. Sam is an elementary school multilingual learner enrolled in a standalone English as a New Language ENL program. Therefore, Sam is entitled to the K5 ENL weight of 0.40. Alex is also an elementary school multilingual learner. Alex is enrolled at a bilingual program at his school. The school has appropriately coded Alex as enrolled in a bilingual program in the New York City Public Schools scheduling system called STARS. As such, Alex is entitled to the K5 bilingual weight of 0.44. Both students are students with disabilities requiring special education classroom instruction services of special education teacher support services, that's called SETS, special class, SC, or integrated co-teaching, ICT. Sam's individual education program, his IEP, requires less than 20% of Sam's instructional program to be in an IEP setting. Therefore, Sam is entitled to the less than 20% special education weight of 0.56, and that's shown in yellow. Alex's individual program, IEP, 21 to 59% of Alex's instructional program is to be spent in an IEP setting. Therefore, Alex is entitled to the 21 to 59% special education weight of 1.25, and that's also shown in yellow. Both students are in poverty, therefore they are entitled to the Fair Student Funding academic intervention weight of 0.12 shown in blue. When you add all the pieces together, Sam's allocation through the Fair Student Funding formula would total a weight of 2.08, while Alex's allocation totaled 2.81. because each weight of 1.0 is equal to 4,137. Sam's weight of 2.08 is equal to approximately $8,600, while Alex's weight of 2.81 is equal to approximately $11,600 under the fair student funding formula. Naomi, I feel like we should take a second and let folk really digest this idea.
Sorry, my screen froze and I couldn't unmute. This is definitely one of the most important slides, as it's more digestible for somebody that's not used to dealing with the budget, for your understanding. It definitely speaks to why funding is different for different schools. Since a few years ago, well, not a few years ago, about 6 or 7 years ago, schools used to be funded by class, right? And once it switched over to being funded per capita and students on an individual basis, that's where you saw a shift in the funding allocated to schools, right? There was no longer, oh, you needed this many classes, so you were automatically going to get this amount of funding because that's what the population called for, right? So when you look at it this way and you look at the weights and the way they're broken down, you can kind of understand how the funds are distributed and why there may be just varying discrepancies between schools based on the population of students that they have. So one thing I do want everyone to understand and to just always keep in mind, whether it's the public and principal leaders of the schools as well alike, is that all schools receive the base weights, as Dr. Pate already explained. But it's very important that when we are registering students, when we are evaluating students, that we are coding them correctly, right? Because this speaks to those weights, those additional weights being allocated to your school, right? There's a lot of times when there may be students that may be in the process of being evaluated, or documents aren't finalized, or there may be errors in things that were computed into the system, and that all directly is directly reflected in the dollars that the schools receive. Dr. Pate did mention earlier the October 31st deadline. That is the date that all schools are audited for their registers. And this just speaks to when schools get their budgets, they are funded based on their projected numbers that they're going to get for the upcoming school year.
That's right.
On October 31st, that audit is to see whether the school met those registers, exceeded those registers, or fell short. And due to the fact that we are funded per capita, if a school falls short of those projected numbers, then wherever those children went, right? Like if they've transferred to other schools, if they've moved out of state or anything like that, those dollars go with them, right? So that's where sometimes schools may incur deficits. But on the flip side, if you're gaining students and you're registering and you're getting more students, that's also when you would see the growth in funding as well, right? Because that's when all that information would be captured. You would hope to work with your, pupil accounting secretaries and ensure that all students are reflected, in the ATS system and things like that. We also want to work with our special education liaisons, our L liaisons, right? Just to make sure that all students are reflected and coded properly so that you are receiving the proper funding for the student population in your schools.
So Naomi, thank you so much for mentioning that last part. I want to remind everyone that when I have the opportunity to share superintendent presentation at our monthly meetings, we always talk about attendance, and we always talk about what our compliance numbers. And so we talk about attendance as part of a best practice. Students need to be in school every day. And we are in this district attacking chronic absenteeism with as much muscle and and them bigger and as we can. We need to get our students in school every day. But we're also looking at our compliance. We spend a lot of time working with principals to say, are we meeting our compliance goals? And my goal for this district is always going to be 100%, nothing less. And so this is yet another part of that conversation, right? Having students be in school every single day, and the schools doing the best job possible to meet every single compliance marker, because that is associated with the success of every student and the financial health of the school. So all of these things work together, and we've got to make sure we stay focused. So I'm going to move on a little bit. Now that we've gone into great detail on the overall New York City public school budgets for the current school year, as well as the current Fair Student Funding formula, I'm going to review what is ahead for the next fiscal school year, which aligns to the 2023-24 school year. There are some common misconceptions around the Fair Student Funding formula and how it allocates resources to schools and students. Our analyses show that by far and large, the Fair Student Funding formula is very effective at directing more resources to students that have greater needs. As noted on this slide, through the Fair Student Funding formula, our schools with the highest share of students in poverty receive 26% more per capita funding than our schools with the lowest share of students in poverty. Further, our analyses show that similar patterns exist for schools with students in temporary housing, students with IEPs, and English language learners. And while our data show that the way we calculate fair student funding allocations through the Fair Student Funding formula is equitable, we do believe that improvements can be made to the Fair Student Funding formula. As we discussed earlier in the presentation, in the summer of 2022, the Fair Student Funding Working Group was formed in response to Chancellor Banks' request to examine the FSF formula and make suggestions for improvements to it. Over the course of 4 months, the group worked in partnership with national experts and our New York City Public Schools team to analyze and identify a series of recommended changes to the formula, as well as align policy recommendations. The working group was tasked with reviewing and making recommendations relating to the Fair Student Funding formula, including the categories, types of students, grade levels, and weights within the formula, in order to best meet the needs of students citywide, while keeping equity at the core of the work. The working group published a report with recommendations for changes to the formula in November 2022. All of the working group materials, including the presentation, meeting minutes, and final report, are available on our website at the link provided in the chat. I'm going to ask our team to please post the link in the chat at this time. This is our Chancellor's commitment to transparency. The Fair Student Funding Working Group published a report with recommendations for changes to the Fair Student Funding, as well as policy recommendations for how New York City public schools could improve fair student funding overall. As a note, some of the public materials published by the working group shows that in some of the modeling, that districts would lose funding as a result of some of the proposals. In our implementation of these new weights, districts and schools will not lose funding as a result of these new weights. Moving forward, the Chancellor has accepted and is proposing 2 changes to the Fair Student Funding formula, which I will now discuss. We are first proposing to add a students in temporary housing weight to the Fair Student Funding formula. This weight would provide additional funding to schools for students who are identified as students in temporary housing. We sometimes call that STH. This marks a significant shift in how we allocate resources to our students. With this specific focus on supporting students who reside in temporary housing, this will have an impact on our asylum-seeking families who are living in temporary housing, providing additional resources to the schools who are taking them in. This was the top recommendation from the Fair Student Funding Working Group and is expected to drive $45 million in funding, impacting students in temporary housing across all 5 boroughs. We will better understand how much funding we will be receiving in our district by late spring when initial allocations are released. Secondly, we are proposing to add a concentration weight to the Fair Student Funding formula. The concentration weight would provide additional funding to schools with high populations of students with significant needs. Research shows that schools that serve higher concentration of students with high needs, such as students in poverty, students with IEPs, English language learners, require additional resources to provide a robust education and appropriate resources and supports for their students. This weight is expected to drive $45 million in funding to schools in all 5 boroughs and would impact over 300 schools across the city, serving the highest concentration of our neediest students. We will better understand how much funding we will be receiving in our district by initial allocations. That's going to come in late spring. The concentration weight includes factors for proposition of students who are in poverty, consistent with the working group's suggestion that we look at poverty in our weights. Students with disabilities, students with IEPs, and students who are in temporary housing and other indicators. So the working group said we need to really focus on students who have the most needs. And that has to be recognized because we know that in some ways, some schools have a disproportionate amount of students who have greater needs. And so they should have greater funding. In addition to changes to the weights outlined in the previous slide, the Chancellor has also accepted additional recommendations from the working group. Moving forward, New York City Public Schools will be 1, prioritizing budget appeals process to be responsive to special education programming. Throughout the engagement sessions, the working group shared the critical need for schools to receive funding for all of the programmatic needs of students with disabilities in a general education setting. Understanding that there are changes to special education programming that may be impacted by changing enrollment at schools. We will be prioritizing supporting small schools and schools with high proportions of students with IEPs in the budget appeal process. While this was not a recommendation in the working group's final report, we heard this as a significant issue from many members of the working group and wanted to be responsive to the needs of the group. We will also be working as a system to increase our transparency around school budgets. We also heard concerns over a lack of transparency and understanding in how we fund schools, how the formula works, and what funds are available at the school level. We are taking steps to address this by being more thoughtful around how we present information to the public and ensure that through presentations and on our website that information is more accessible to all of our stakeholders, including making significant changes to presentations like this one. I don't know if you all know this. This presentation has never been made by superintendencies before. And when our chancellor said, this is what we're going to do, every superintendent in the room was surprised. But here is the brilliance of transparency. We have a practice in District 28 of holding each other accountable, right? So conversations as important as this should actually be subject to that same practice of accountability. So it is my opportunity and my pleasure to share our Fair Student Funding formulas and also our district-wide budget and to help you in understanding your school-based budget, and then to get that feedback so that we grow in our understanding as a community of leaders. So I'm really thankful for the opportunity to do this. In order to decide on which recommendations to choose, we carefully considered the recommendations of the working group and looked closely at the impact of each recommendation. The working group was clear with their values, that we have more work to do to direct funding to our schools with the greatest needs. We selected these proposals by balancing the values of equity and stability, looking to direct additional resources toward our schools and students with our highest needs, while also ensuring that schools do not see disruptions to existing resources. As a note, schools will not lose money as a result of this proposal. We are not reducing any weights to schools to fund this proposal. You want me to say that again? Schools will not lose money as a result of these proposals. We are not reducing any weights to schools to fund this proposal. So this chart, similar to the one shown earlier, now includes the proposed new weights for next school year. What is listed here in the blue highlighted section in the top right-hand table are the proposed changes to the Fair Student Funding weights for the next school year. That means if approved by the Panel for Education Policy, our PEP, in April, these new weights will be used to calculate the school's Fair Student Funding allocations for the 2023-24 school year. If approved by the PEP, there is no impact to the current school year budgets. New weights would be calculated and impact schools' budgets by initial allocations for fiscal year 2024. I'm going to give you a minute to just take a look at this slide.
Dr. Pate?
Yes.
I just wanted to speak to, I see some, some comments in the chat. And as we're addressing, the new weights that have been proposed, I just wanted to take a moment to kind of address the comments and also just expound on what you have said already. So I just want everyone to understand that, in previous years, it's only last year that all schools were now funded at 100% of their Fair Student Funding weights, right? There used to be for years prior, the year before that, it was only at 90%, and years before that, the percentages varied by school, right? So that was always typically a very big point of frustration with schools because they didn't feel that they were being funded properly, even though there were different allocations that were given to supplant the difference in funding. Now that we are funded at 100%, all of these additional weights are on top of that Fair Student Funding weight that all schools receive, that base weight, right? But what we have to also take into consideration and truly understand is that the student population is what drives the funding at the school. So student retention is very important. And on top of that, as I noted before, we're no longer funded by class. So we have to understand that the reason why we can't go school by school when we do these presentations is because there's very big differences between school populations, right? We have some schools that are large, we have some schools that are small, we have some schools that are like somebody mentioned magnet schools and things like that. We have some schools that are Title I schools and some that aren't, right? And those all speak to the type of funding that they receive. So in adding these two additional weights, what they did was they are trying to take into consideration these different pockets of students and give more resources to the school on top of what was already been given. They spoke about, RTI and AIS. All schools since COVID have been receiving ARPA funding, right? And these funds were given to schools as supplemental funds. These funds were not for staffing at all, only this year. And it's maybe after the school year started, midway through, were they allowed to use a portion of that money to go towards staffing if necessary. But these were all additional dollars that were given as a result of COVID to address, you know, students being out of the classroom, coming back and integrating into a school setting, providing assistance with, you know, tutoring, and just giving those additional resources and funds to schools so that they can use them in a way that they feel may be best beneficial to their student population, right? So I just want everybody to understand that them adding these weights, as Dr. Pate said, is not going to reduce dollars in any other area. This is only adding to what you will be allocated based on your student population. And we have to understand that, like I said, each school is different. Teacher average salary is also different at every school. And that's based on, you know, the number of years that teachers have in the building. So that also speaks to what it costs when it comes to staffing the building for classrooms and things like that. And when we do get the dollars, while the principal is who is in charge of disseminating those dollars and deciding how they're going to spend those resources and where that money is going to go, we first have to always focus on the classroom. And that has to be funded first before we do anything outside of the classroom. And that would speak to why sometimes you may not have as much maybe RTI or AIS that you may feel the school needs, but there are other allocations that are given to the school that they can use to address those needs as well. And if you do want to look at the school individually, the same link that is going to be provided in this PowerPoint and Dr. Pate mentioned earlier, you are able to look at your school's budget individually in the district, and it's all available on the DOE website so that you can see the breakdown of dollars that each school receives.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you so very much. So let's talk about the timeline moving forward. Okay. So you've seen the proposal, and this is the timeline. So obviously, tonight is a big part of this. The first step in this timeline is in February, March, given initial budget estimates of city and state revenue. New York City Public School Superintendents will present to the CECs the proposed fair student funding weights for the coming school year. That's what we're doing tonight. In April and May, the Panel for Education Policy will vote on the proposed fair student funding weights for the coming school year. In late spring, New York Public Schools will release budget allocations to schools. And in June, principals, along with their school leadership team, propose budgets for the coming year. They'll receive those proposed budgets. In July, I and my team will certify alignment between school budgets and the comprehensive education plan for the coming year. And in September, our new school year will begin with these much enhanced fair student funding calculations. So all of our public comments will be received by New York City Public School teams. Public questions and comments related to the Fair Student Funding formula will be posted on the Panel for Education Policy website. Analysis and response of each relevant question and comment will be available for review on the Fair Student Funding website in advance of the April 28th vote. Comments and questions may be directed to the following email address or phone number by April 18th, 2023. I am going to give you the email address as well as the phone number. I'm going to do it twice and I'm going to do it slow. And I know it's posted there, but I'm going to do it anyway. Okay. So comments and questions may be directed below by April 18th, 2023. Via email, it should go to budgetpubliccomments@schools.nyc.gov or by phone to 212-374-6754 Again, comments should be received by April 18th, 2023 via email to budgetpubliccomments@schools.nyc.gov or by phone to 212-374-6754. I thank you tremendously for your time and attention. I know that it was not easy to sit through literally an hour presentation. Thank you for sharing questions and thoughts during the presentation via the chat. We're going to be gathering all of our unanswered questions at the end of this conversation and sharing back to you within a few days. But as always, I want to say thank you to this community because you do sweat the small stuff. That's our district. We give of our time, we give of our energy, we give of our influence to support all of our scholars across this district because we understand the ripple effect, right? What do we say all the time? I'm coming back to you. I'm going to stop sharing. What do we say to each other all the time? We strive for inestimable contribution to the lives of our scholars. That's the ripple effect. What I do every single day has far-reaching implications for every single student. And so thank you for attention to this. I know you probably have questions. Naomi is here because she is a budget expert, and we're going to try to field questions on tonight, to just support great understanding as we move forward.
Thank you, Dr. Pate, and thank you, Naomi. Once a year you guys come and do this, and it's so important because so much is depending on this formula, right? And so much is hinged on this. So thank you so much for grab more coffee, Dr. Pate. Grab more tea. You did a great job.
Tea.
If you could just give a little applause to her, thank you so much. It was a lot to go through and do, and we're grateful for your work. And Naomi, you are a familiar face on this platform, and we so thank you for your work that you do and breaking it down to us here. I'm sure there are many more questions. Dr. Pate, will these slides be available to us to share?
Yes, I believe there will be a public-facing version of this document that will be shared.
And then we can put it on our website also. So before we go to questions, again, we have like 8 minutes more. If you want to speak or you want to add a comment, you have a question to Dr. Pate, Naomi, please put the word speak on the chat feature at 8 p.m. We will take down that chat feature, the speak feature, but the chat will be up still. But it stops at 8 p.m. if you want to make a comment or ask a question. That's the time to do so now, is to put the word speak in the chat feature. Before we jump to questions and answers, we're going to be having our council members give their reports. And I want to first start off by saying that Success Academy, I want to bring that. We have been talking a lot about this in our council for the past, since last year, right? Since last year, over the holidays, and then this year. And we saw what unity can do. We saw what collaboration can do. And we saw what, when we as a community come together and put our voices together, stand side by side with each other and rally under one umbrella, what it can make a difference. And I want to thank our chancellor, because publicly I called him out when we had our town hall at Mr. Chancellor, please listen to community feedback. You vowed, you promised, and you told us that as chancellor, you will listen to community feedback. And I want to personally say thank you to our chancellor for listening to the community. The community spoke across on many levels, across the board. And this council, CEC28, our amazing team here, we have always done the amazing things where we take community feedback and we elevate it up the ladder to where it needs to go. And to all the community partners, Community Board 12, and all the others who came and stood shoulder to shoulder with us, the UFT, and we all came and said, listen, this is what we want as a community. It was heard, it was felt, but I want to reiterate that the fight is not over. We have to continue and keep persistent on what's happening. As you saw, the governor recently suggested in her budget plan to lift the cap on charter schools. So the fight continues, right? We have to continue to secure these spaces for our families, our students, and our tax dollars will be spent the way we think it should be spent. We have a say in this. This is our money. I want to give a shout out to BB Matadin, who's our face liaison, and thank you, BB, for all the wonderful things. Happy birthday to you. BB celebrated his birthday this past Saturday. Yes, happy birthday to you. BB, are you there? You can say hi if you want to, but I know BB's doing a million things, but thank you so much, BB, for all that you do. We're happy to have you as our face liaison, and in partnership with CEC28, we are great together, and thank you for all that you do. So at this point in time, I'm going to be calling all the council members to go ahead and make their reports and give their views. And please, the council members, please say more about Success Academy, what your thoughts are, because we did a lot of work. We spent a lot of our holidays, our holiday season in this together. So feel free to take that moment to really celebrate, to see what you have to say. We're in this together. I want to thank the CEC, all the council members, for your hard work. Being your president has been amazing, is amazing, and will continue to be amazing because of you, council members. You are all wonderful members, and we are a team together that does amazing things. Thank you. Okay, so I'll ask our first Vice President, Barbara Williams. I'm not sure if she's able to speak at this point. Barbara, are you able to speak at this point? I know she's multitasking. And if she's not,
I think she said she wouldn't be able to.
Good. Then, and to council members, if you have questions on topic also about the physical funding presentation, please do so too. Then we'll have Ted Chang. Go for it.
Hi, everybody.
President.
So I guess a couple things. Great work on the Success Academy stuff. That was just such a wonderful show of unity across the district. It was just amazing to see such an outpouring of parents and staff and community members in Southeast Queens. The students coming from the Springfield Gardens campus to the MS-72 campus. I mean, that was just, I couldn't even believe that when that happened. I thought that was amazing. So just wonderful, wonderful work by the kids and by the families. And then also just to see the solidarity across Queens from all the school leadership teams, in the northern part of our district and also in other districts across Queens. So I just thought that was just great work overall by everyone. And it was great to see that the administration listened. I do want to talk about fair student funding. I had a quick question for Naomi Alexander. I hope she can answer. The new concentration weights, I was wondering if there has been any sort of guidance issued, or has there been any sort of discussion of what those tier 1, 2, and 3 categories look like? Because I think sort of the devil's in the details, and we'd all like to know, what those groups are going to be. And then I would just like to just sort of say just generally about the fair student funding process that, for community members watching this presentation, I think people may not realize how big a deal it is to just even have this fair student funding formula being revised the way it is being revised. And I think this really speaks to parent involvement and the impact that, all of us working on CCs and doing advocacy, this entire process flowed directly out of parent advocacy, and it's not really obvious from that presentation, but there were CEC members during the de Blasio administration, lobbying, and there was a task force to try to get the formula changed, and the students in temporary housing weight was specifically proposed during that task force, but it didn't happen during that administration. And then when Chancellor Banks came, I remember last year around this time, there was one of the first PEP meetings that he attended, and a number of us CC members got up there and said, what is going on? Every year after year, the formula never changes, and yet we know, because we can see the results that are happening in our schools, where we have schools with high concentrations of disadvantaged students. We know that the funding can't be right, because if the funding was right, everyone would be getting, roughly similar outcomes, and yet we can consistently see that that doesn't happen. And so there were a lot of CEC members over the years that have engaged in this advocacy, but specifically last year at that meeting, I see Ted Leather in the audience today from CCHS. He spoke at that meeting. So there were CEC members doing this advocacy last year, and Chancellor Banks, to his credit, at that meeting listened, and he said, I'm going to convene my own task force, and let's see what happens. So to his credit, he did convene that task force, and that task force produced these recommendations. And here we are a year later. They're getting ready to send it to the PEP and approve these new weights, and there never are new weights, and the existing weights never change. So to have this happen is a big deal, and it flowed directly out of parent advocacy. And I'm grateful for everyone who's done this work, and let's do it. Thank you.
Ted, was there a question? Did you ask the question? Because I know you had a question at some point in the
I
air.
think
Right,
he
the
wanted me
question
to
was
just
the weights.
expand a little bit on the new weights, correct?
Yeah, the tier 1 to 3
Thank you.
high concentration schools.
So let's
Okay, so
What do
I'll
those
speak a
groups
little
look
bit
like?
about both of them. Just briefly, just because the student and temporary housing, all Title I schools usually already get an allocation that is separated for that population of students in temporary housing. And then we even have schools that are non-Title I schools that will receive funding for students in temporary housing. Now, this allocation, this new weight that's being given is because during the 2021-2022 school year, 1 in every 10 students in New York City spent time living in temporary housing, right? So the barriers that were faced by these students in temporary housing often led to high rates of chronic, absenteeism. And obviously that's going to speak to disparities in academic outcomes. So in the 2020 to 2021 student in temporary housing dropout of high school at nearly 3 times the rate of their permanently housed peers. Only 71% graduated in 4 years, compared with 82% of permanently housed students, and 46% were chronically absent, right? Compared with 28% of permanently housed students, missing at least 1 out of every 10 days of school. So because of this, they felt they needed to provide additional resources to address this population. Before, this allocation was only being used to assist with that population in providing them maybe with additional supplies, uniforms, and things of that nature. But now this funding has multiple attributes where this funding can be placed. We are addressing mental health. They're addressing, it can be used for after school. It can be used for early intervention, all types of things. So this is just going to be additional funding that can go towards those needs. Now, the tiered funding for high concentration of students with increased needs, that was put in place to speak to the goal of maximizing equity, right? The methodology is designed to target schools that serve high proportions of students in foster care, students in shelters, students in temporary housing, as the other weight did, but also students that are Ls, right? English language learners, newcomers to that population, and long-term Ls, students with interrupted or inconsistent formal education, right? Because we have a lot of kids that were outside of school during the pandemic. Either they moved away or went to a different type of schooling during that time period due to the fact that there was no in-person learning. And it also will speak to the students with disabilities and economic needs, right? So each of these student populations have unique needs. And there are many students that have more than one of these needs. So that's what speaks to the tiered funding and why there's 3 different tiers, because these needs, based on where those students lies and those attributes that they are identified as having, that weight is compounded, right? So that's why you have different tiers, because you may have a child who is an L student, right? Maybe it's one of the migrants that just came over. They're also an economic need, and they're also in a shelter, right? So those are three different attributes that align with that student. So that weight is going to be higher than one that only falls into one of the categories.
Thank you, Naomi.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Okay, we'll
No
move
problem.
along. I know Elena said she'll pass today. Luzao, Treasurer Luzao. Member.
Hi, thanks, Dr. Kate and Naomi give us such a mind-blowing amount of information, and this is really helpful. You know, a lot of things are, you know, really open up our vision, and you know, the level of transparency is really great for our community to understand, you know, how our school is run. Right, and also I want to, you know, applaud Chancellor Banks, who, you know, didn't take all the recommendations from the working group. There are some extreme recommendations that are clearly political driven. He didn't, you know, pick fights between, you know, try to pick a fight between communities. Instead, he focused solely on the student that really needs to solving the problems to, you know, give, you know, the needed fund for disadvantaged student. That's, you know, I really appreciate that Chancellor Banks is true to his principle, being very pragmatic and common sense leader of our education. Thank you.
Thank you, Treasurer Luzao. Next, we're gonna have members. Rajun is out. Cassandra Alexander.
She's now speaking.
Yeah, she can't speak.
Okay, sorry about that. Member Latifa Lewis.
Hi, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
So for me, so a couple of things. Safety concerns have been down this year, so that's one of the good reports from some of my schools compared to last year. So that's good for the district. Two of my liaison schools are in the preliminary stages of a proposed merger. So there have been some concerns from the family and staff just with the impacts of the implementation. You know, we all see some of the positives in there, but as said, the devil is in the details. So that's just something that's on the bandwidth, looking at how that is going to work out and when that actually goes to the PEP. So that's for PS312 and PS40. PS312, as mentioned previously, recently got a magnet grant. PS40 has been an institution in the Southeast community for decades. And there is the chance that if the merger does go through, well, PS40 would lose that name. They would take on the name of the 312 Magnet School, etc. So that is just something that the community has expressed that, you know, they want to know a lot more about it. As mentioned before, communities feeling generated around the whole rallying together for the co-location. You know, it has morale up really great in the district, and I think all of the schools that signed, you know, put in not proposals. What do you call it?
Resolution.
Resolutions. I'm sorry, it's a long day. Resolutions and so forth. You know, are happy that we got this off of the table, that it didn't actually go to a vote. But I want to be careful about patting ourselves on the back too much, because as we said, we have won the battle, but the war is not over. So we're asking to ensure that from the district, from the elected officials, from DOE Central, that energy and effort and focus that has been put on these schools that was sometimes not on a lot of people's radar continue, even though that particular co-location is out there. Regarding the fair student funding, just a couple comments and questions. So it's great that a lot of these populations that really need additional supports, and I think at least most of the schools that I've gone to in terms of like SLT meetings, they have been drilling into the CEPs, to address their specific needs. So I think this targets that. One issue I always have about the students who kind of fall into the gaps. I know you mentioned with the funding, once you get the total amount of funding, the principals and so forth have the opportunity to distribute it. Once the formula is in place or so forth. A big concern sometimes is that, as you said, it can cover after school programs, it can cover a lot of different supports. Instructional supports in the classroom are sometimes easy to get in place for the beginning of the school year and so forth, but a lot of the other supplements sometimes don't start till the end of October, the end of November. By that time, many families have already made alternative plans. And so you end up having really great programs that should benefit 500 students in a school, but end up benefiting 10 or 15 or so forth. So as we have these adjusted fundings and so forth, what other measures are in place to ensure that some of the providers that are on, like those DOE lists and so forth, maybe are there more flexible deadlines in terms of getting things in terms of when funding has to go through, in terms of being able to really get things in place, like for the beginning of the school year or before September is out, as opposed to sometimes in the latter parts of the year, because then it really does sometimes become money down the drain. A lot of great things are happening, but not all the students who need them are benefiting. And similarly with the special populations, sometimes a population that gets left out while we focus in on the ones who need it the most are those who get by, those who are doing okay, because they don't raise any red flags. They show up to school, they get C's, B's, whatever it is. What is built in to ensure that those students are supported to get to their best? Okay, so it's good to move a student who is at a D to a B, but what about that student who's at the B plus? How do we make them get to their A plus? Just any guidance that can be put into that, or even if it's something that has to be coming back with a follow-up. So that's where my report and comments coming from.
So I can definitely address your questions. So the initial question about interventions being in place prior to October, November, and things like that. One of the slides on the PowerPoint spoke to the timeline of the budgets. So typically budgets are released in June of the prior school year, right? And we have till July to complete those budgets. So schools have their funding in place for their initial budget in place, usually typically by, around July 4th. Anything beyond that, if a school has not had their budget finalized, it's due to a discrepancy in funding. There may be a need for additional funding. And one thing that I want to make maybe highlight, which as the public you may not understand when it comes to the budget. When we have students, we have mandates that are in place, right? When it comes to class size, how many students of a certain population can be in a class, and things like that. So one example I can give you is, let's say an ICT class, right? We cannot have more than 12 ICT students sitting in the class with the general ed students. So let's say a school has 14 ICT students on one grade, right? So instead of, as we know, ICT classes call for 2 teachers. Those are co-teaching classes with one general ed teacher and one special ed teacher, right? So those are 2 salaries that need to be paid for that one class. Now, once we go over, even having a 13th child, now the school needs to open up a second ICT class. And due to the fact that we're no longer funded by class and we're funded by student, that one student alone being over in that classification now calls for the school to spend for an additional special ed teacher to be put into that class. So it's an additional salary that now the school has to account for, right? So there are situations like that, which we cannot say, no, this child doesn't need this anymore or anything like that. On the budget side, on the operational side, we don't have anything to do specifically with, recommendations, classifications of the students, and things like that. We can only speak to the data and what is presented to us and what the breakdown would be based on the student population that the school is showing in the system. So a lot of times there are situations like that that impact the budget, where now if that school's teacher average salary is $100,000, that's $100,000 that maybe could have gone, right, to after school, or getting somebody in the building to do professional development or work with the students. But now that has to go into the classroom to get an additional teacher, because we have to open up that second ICT class. So that's why I say you cannot just say each school is not the same as the other. Every school is unique because every student population is unique to that school, and it changes, right? You have some kids that they may have started out with an IP, and then in a few months they've been reevaluated, they no longer have that. Now, when that's reflected in the system, those additional weights that you were given for that child, when they do that audit in
Go
October
away.
1st, they go away, right? So now the school has to supplement that funding that was now lost. So there's a lot of moving parts when it comes to that. So sometimes schools may not start these programs until October, because that's when they really have a true finalized picture of what their student population is and what their funding is going to look like, right? We don't want to start having people coming in and then later you're not able to pay them, right? Or you've spent this money, but now your classroom doesn't have a teacher that it needs, and now you're out of compliance with the state. So there's a lot of moving parts, that it's not just where's the money or how is it. There are mandates that are in place. We have to have funding for when teachers are out. We have to have funding for all stuff. These are mandated pieces that have to be in place with the initial budget that is allocated to schools. So it gets pretty tricky. Now, when we speak to the second part of your question, regarding the students that may fall through the cracks because maybe they don't identify as students with disabilities, right? That's something that has to be directed to that school specifically and
Yeah.
their leadership, right? And
So,
how they are addressing their student population and what they're doing.
no,
That doesn't
absolutely.
really have to
Let
do
me
with,
jump in on that
yeah.
one. I appreciate that. So one, we have built-in protocols, we have built-in practices that are required of every school in order to tier students and to address them appropriately. So we utilize in every single District 28 school the instructional leadership team for that exact purpose. Every principal is required to tier students within the school and to determine what enrichments they need. There are some enrichments that are intended to bring students up levels to be, sort of to be on grade level and beyond. And there are also tiers for enrichments across every school. We even tier, let me tell you something, we tier our staff in the building. I tier our principals at the district level. And not everyone needs the same thing. So the support is highly differentiated. And there is a practice in place. We monitor that, right? And so because they're principals are always trying to make it work, right? Because you don't often have the level of resources that you need. They're always trying to make it work. And so they'll use a prep period to meet with a group of teachers to look at a group of students' performance, looking at student work products to say, how can we give students what they need? That's why across our district, we've instituted the when period. It's called the what I need period. That's an example of the tiering process that we have in existence. And what schools have done is incorporate this period through of the day where students are almost individually programmed to get specific supports. And it's for the supports of maybe I want to go from a B plus to an A plus. If I want to go from a D plus to a B plus, those students are tiered in that process. So it's one of the ways that we try to catch students at every level, even despite some of the challenges associated with budget. This is when I tell you all, it's not just a complicated process. Naomi, this is like October 15th, they getting ready to go into. They are around the clock working on trying to settle budgets for weeks at a time. With schools, we sit in at the district, we sit in on these conversations. They're not even mostly happy conversations, because you're trying to make do with so much less than what you actually need. And some of our smaller schools really suffer. And that's, I'm going to return to that point, right? Like it's a challenge for us because teacher salaries, staff salaries continue to move. We have unions and we're union strong in 28. And so salaries continue to move as they should. And we quickly begin to outpace the per capita if we don't have these adjustments that our chancellor's talk is suggesting. And so we always have to figure out how to make it work, and when you have to think about accessing people, I mean, that, I don't know if any of you, those of you who've had this decision, sometimes you will cultivate someone from a school aide to a paraprofessional into a teacher position, and you're so excited about the future of these brand new folk, and then you're faced with having to access them because you don't have budget, and that can just tear your heart apart as a school leader. So, it's there's so many pieces to this, and thank you for bringing up all of these pieces, Ms. Lewis. I always appreciate you just kind of digging into different pieces and parts of a conversation. But yeah, we're getting ready to go at this again, you all. So
One last thing I forgot. What is our compliance rate right now in terms of having a parent coordinator in every school? Because I know at the beginning of the school year we did not.
I
There were some
think
outstanding ones.
I think we were only short one at the point. And so we were essentially, we had to clear a person who was out for a long time in order to bring on the parent coordinator. So we're almost there.
Thank you, Dr. Pate. Thank you, Naomi. Next, we're going to have Council Member Shaliza Dean. Ms. Dean. Okay, while she comes together, we'll get Council Member Simone Donbach.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I first wanted to say thank you to all the parents who came together to unite and to speak up against the co-locations, and I'm so happy that we were successful. Your advocacy worked, and I think it's, for our district, it's something very special, because there were times when we were divided, and so for me, I'm very happy to see how we all came together, how we stand united, and how we won. I also want to mention that for those parents who do want to continue to do advocacy, tomorrow is a press conference from Senator Lou, Jackson, Mayor Clear, Ramos, Brisport at 12 p.m. at the steps of City Hall. And you can just go and join them there. Yeah, besides doing advocacy, I was busy in preparing a new workshop series for our district, and I'm really happy to let you know that this is in cooperation with District 29. I want to give credit to Natifa, who pointed me to District 29. There is a IEP representative on the CEC, Ms. Joanne Cummings, and she has been already hosted a couple of workshops for District 29 on IEP. And she suggested that she would do 2 workshops for our district, for our families. That would be on February 21st and February 23rd in the evening, and we will share details. And then we would combine the following workshops together with the District 29, starting at the end of February on February 28th, going forward until the end of the year. And I'm really glad that we are able to cooperate, because the idea that I originally had was really just to have like one event to inform parents. But when I spoke to Ms. Joanne, I realized that she has such a wealth of knowledge and experience, and she was so kind to offer to join her in District 29, that I felt like, yes, that would be really great for our families, because there's no way that I could do anything similar to that. So I'm really, really grateful for her generosity. And I'm very happy, and I hope that many of our District 28 families can join. And otherwise, that's my news. I haven't been able to attend any SLT meeting from my liaison schools because it's the beginning of the month. But yeah, so I'm very, very happy about the IAP workshop series. Thank you.
Thank you, Simone. Thank you so much. Shaliza, are you there?
Yes, I'm back.
Go
Thank
ahead.
you. Thank you. Again, I guess I echo what my fellow council member is saying. It's great success to see us working together, and so many SLTs and schools that we didn't. I mean, I wouldn't even think about these schools that were going to join us in this process. UFTs. It was definitely a group effort, a collaborative effort, and I commend all these gathering. I mean, it was so much that we did, so much we put in. We had our council members that were more familiar and educated in these topics than we did, and we learned a lot during that time. And I'm grateful that to be part of it and to see something so unique, and it was excellent to see such an outcome for our families, for our schools, for our students. And because for even to the end, it felt like this was not winnable. Like like these people had people in their back pockets that they could have just pull out different rules, and we would lose this battle. It is, as Vijay said, we won the battle, but the war is not over. And there's a lot of advocacy, starting with the fact that we need new CEC members, guys. Some of us are graduating, like myself and Barbara, I think. We are graduating, and our time is up, and the door is open, the opportunity is open for anyone to apply. If it's a CEC, if it's the citywide CEC, these opportunities are here for parents to continue to be parents leaders and have your voice heard. Continue to be part of your PTA, SLT, and have your voice and use your voice. It is so important that we use our voice. In the coming months, we'll be hosting community fairs, and spring is coming, outreach events and health fairs and all these things that are positive, and I'm hoping we can gather. One of the situation I'm having some challenge with is Title I, and we as parents get a Title I training, and then I don't know how much the school gets. So I thought, hey, how about we have a Title I meeting in the future with the budget manager, the PC, the principal, all the figures in this process, because it's funding for our parents to get educated and help our students, and it is something that we want to see more diverse activities. We want to see, how best we could manage the funds. And I think talking about budget, it is a significant part of the parent funding budget. The rest of it obviously is for students. So we learn a great deal tonight, without a doubt, and we'll continue to learn. But I look forward for us doing something more positive with our Title I's, and helping our Title I's not just in educating parents, but to educate our budget managers, and if it's the secretaries, whoever we need to bring it as a whole, and not it being for us having a disconnect as to, hey, when is this really due, and when is that due, and when does things go in Galaxy, and when does it go there, and when does it go here, and things of such. It may seem simple, but it is a big deal to me, and I am sure parents who are are in Title I schools, are representing their schools, can relate to it. And looking forward to our coming events and meeting in person. It's going to be spring. It's February, and Happy New Year's. Happy New Year's to Lunar Year to all those who are celebrating, and Happy Black History Month. I hope we get to do something um, in meet up and do some celebrations in our schools. The schools are doing a lot on it. And I am grateful to report that the New York City Council members this morning ruled to write a resolution, I guess, to add Islamic education into public school curriculum. And that's a big deal for our diversity inclusion. Um, we're talking about all these years and trying, and if it wasn't for COVID, we wouldn't have halal food in all the schools, trying to help out our community through the years for those couple of years. So I am grateful that progress is being made, and every little progress is progress, you know, and it may not be us that we're making this progress for, but it could be for the future of other parents and other students. And that's where we stand. Thanks, guys. Good night.
Thank you so much. Progress is important, Shaliza. All
Yeah.
progress is important, and when one of us rise, we all rise, right? That's beautiful.
Yep.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you so much. So we're going to be asking our council member Simone
I
Dornbach
just
to do.
wanted to jump in
Yes,
really
please go ahead,
quickly
Naomi.
because I have to jump off. So I did want to just say good night to everyone. And I appreciate all your questions and insight to what is going on in District 28. As I noted in the chat, if you ever need additional insight, you want to discuss, the budget at school specific level and want to have me at any one of your meetings, I'm more than willing to come and participate. You just have to obviously let me know in advance from the principal, and we can set that up, whether it be virtual or in person. So I'm always here to assist as it relates to the budget. And you can find me in Outlook at alexander@schools.nyc.gov if you do have any, further questions for me. Okay.
Thank you so much, Naomi. Thank you always for being so available and that's friendly. It makes a difference. Thank you so much.
No
We
problem. Have a
appreciate it.
good
Really
night,
smart.
everyone.
Thank you so very much.
Have a good night.
Thank
Yes. So we will now go to our public comment section. We have 10 people who signed up to speak. So we'll be asking Simone Dornbach to do timekeeping. So Simone, when they have the 3 minutes time is up, they say time is up. Okay, and do this we've done. Vanessa Sparks, go ahead. Let's make sure they can unmute. There she is. Yes.
Good evening. Good evening, CEC28 President. BJ, how are you?
Hello.
I have a question and a comment. So the first question is regarding the Fair Student Funding Formula. Is it possible that a special presentation can be done where it's less academic, meaning it's a lot more user-friendly for community people, parents to understand, and also to discuss how the allocations per school fit into that school's comprehensive education plan, if that anyone plans to do that. Secondly, I would love for my community, but first let me just say I'm a Vanessa Sparks, Community Board 12 Education Committee member on behalf of the Community Board Chair, the Reverend Carlene Thorbs, and our Community Board 12 Education Committee Chair, LaToya LeGrand. I bring greetings. So I am going to report back to our Education Committee that we invite the Budget Director for District 28 to come and maybe give us a presentation on how the Fair Student Funding Formula will work. My comment is I want to say congratulations to District 28 as a whole with the coming together and rallying around the opposition to the co-location and at MS 72 as well as the Springfield Garden campus. Both of those schools sit in Community Board 12, and I am a lifelong resident of District 28. I was born before there even was a District 28, and it's so tell them age. And it was, I can tell you, this is maybe one of less than a handful of times that I've seen this entire district rally around one another. So kudos, North and Southern End, just thank you. And I want to give a special shout out to Dr. Tammy Pate for her leadership. Dr. Pate, you show great, courageous leadership on around this issue. For many people don't know, it can be very, very difficult and uncomfortable for superintendents to take a stand around issues like this. But she stood up for her school. She stood up for the parents. She stood up for the staff. I want to say thank you to the UFT District 28 leadership. But Dr. Pate, just thank you so much for being a true leader in this district. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. Dr. Pate, any remarks about having a version of this presentation that is more community friendly?
Yes, so Ms. Sparks, you know that we are happy to bring this this entire deck plus some real talk conversation to our community board. I'm sure that Naomi will agree to present as well alongside of us, and we can stop. I think one of the things that will make it more accessible is if we can stop and have questions in between each of the slides, like just being able to have folk to look at a slide and then ask a question about it. I think that'll bring it, to a level of real talk for real understanding. And I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to do it. So you let me know when, even later this month, or whenever it's possible. We'll Naomi and I will get together, and we will come back and make this presentation all over again, and again allow for some real conversation, so that we can get rid of the edu-speak, right? The language that's like, and just have some real conversation.
Thank you, Dr. Pate. Vanessa.
One last thing, I just want to say happy Black History Month. I just want to say happy Black History Month. Just so you know, Black history is American history. The story of America would never be without Black history. So I just want to throw that in.
Thank you, Vanessa. And this one is also say thanks to you, Vanessa, for your leadership and for what you do to the district.
That's right.
It does not go unnoticed, and Community Board 12 will not be the same without you. I want to say that you have made it very prominent, very clear, and you're a voice of many, and we value your input always at our meetings and continue to be a voice for the voiceless. Thank you. Next person we have is Alexia Myers-Hines.
Yes. Hi, good evening, everyone, and thank you. Thank you for this opportunity just to speak. So I'm here twofold as a parent of District 28, and I think just as echoing what Vanessa, Ms. Sparks said, that it would be helpful to share this with other parents, but in a forum and where it's easy for parents to digest and understand it. And so in my other hat as a community member and an employee in the community, we also have a setting in Jamaica Community Partnership of a virtual space and also meeting space for our parent advisory committee, who would be parents that would want to know more about understanding the budget. And these are parents who are involved in their schools. And so I just see this more as an avenue to continue to share and get more parents involved. I also want to share that on March 4th, our organization, in partnership with a number of organizations in the borough of Queens, as well with Senator Comrie's office, Councilmember Williams, that there will be a community resource fair for families who are residing in shelters, but also families who are in need. Food will be provided for them to take home, that meaning food pantry bags, clothing, other resources that they will need. And so I want to be able to share that out to schools for any families that you might have that are residing in the shelters, but also be families who are new arrivals, to come out and participate in this resource fair so they can get some of the services and supplies and things that they need. I put my email in the chat for that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Next we have is Star Brown.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Sorry. I have a comment and then I have two questions. First, I'd like to piggyback off everyone else and say that I'm very proud of the work we did concerning the co-location. And then my questions, I'm Star Brown from Jamaica Children's School 312. And I'm one of the SLT parent members. And so my first question is, with District 28 being able to win that first battle, I did hear that it is required by law that they get space either in our public schools building already, or they would get a new building, but it would be paid for, I think, through the DOE. Like, they would still have to pay for it. So I wanted to know some more details about that and how that works and how that affects the schools that are not charter schools, how that affects the budget already. And then my second question was concerning 312, if there was any update on the consolidation proposal or possible proposal to merge with PS40. And thank you for this platform, guys. I love coming to these meetings and being able to learn more and have a say in what happens in our community and our schools. So I want to thank y'all for that.
Thank you, Star. Thank you. Star, the question about the Success Academy and the charter schools co-location and paying the rent, I don't want to make statements that's not backed up. So I would really appreciate if we could ask our AA to please put our email address on the chat. And if you could just email us, Star, so we can get you a proper answer for that. And then we can respond to you, in a more concise way. But I think what you said is correct, but I want to be sure if we're saying the same thing. Dr. Pate?
Yeah. And so you took the words out of my mouth. The short answer is that we are required by law to
Right.
provide physical location for schooling for charters within the city of New York. The longer, and I'm going to give you a longer response that is, very vetted, right, to that question, so that you have all the links. So I'm going to ask that question be in the chat. You all know from the beginning of our presentation, I said to you, please post questions. I'm going to take those questions and we're going to get all of your answers and then return them to you so that you can share that with your community and say, this is the answer to this question. And so the short answer is we're required by law to provide a location or to pay for that location. So if we cannot provide them with a site, then they can lease a site on their own, but we are responsible for great portions of the monetary, the cost of that site. So we're going to get you a big answer moving forward. To the 312, the question about consolidation, as I've said before, and I'm going to reiterate again, I would not allow district planning to create a proposal. I wanted to demonstrate the kind of respect and transparency that I'd like to see across this entire system. And in doing so, I had open conversations with both school communities around the potential consolidation of the schools. I have not allowed that conversation to go to a proposal. It is not scheduled at any PEP. It is still a conversation. And we are going to continue to talk with the school communities and figure out how feasible this is to move forward. So this is my mouth and this very public space with this hot wired mic telling you that this is not a proposal at this time. It is a conversation that is 100% around making sure that we optimize every single space across our school and that we provide for every student, free of the burden of budget and money, the best quality of education that we possibly can, with resources that makes this entire world jealous and want to run to District 28. So that's my big plan. And we are going to return to the school communities to continue having conversations about whether this is a good thing to move forward to a proposal, but it is not a proposal right now.
Thank you, Dr. Pate. Thank you so much. From her mouth, there it is. Ari Ines. Hopefully I'm saying it correctly. Ari, are you there?
You are.
There
Hi.
you go. Yes.
You are. Hello, everyone. Thank you. My name is Ari Innes from the office of New York State Senator Leroy Comrie. Hello, Dr. Pate. Senator, we'll get back to you momentarily in regards to what we discussed before, by the way, just to give you an update, quick update.
Thank you.
So we don't have, I feel like I want to knock on wood on this. For once this month, we don't have too much going on. But just to give you a few updates, we are still giving assistance with HEAP applications. That's the home energy eating program. So that ends in, I believe, the end of March. No, that ends in April. So if you have any families, know of any families who need help with their national grid or Con Ed, if you have a shut-off notice with Con Ed, that's when they will accept the Con Ed bill to assist with payments. Please stop by our office. We have a representative that comes in twice a week, every Tuesday and Thursday, but she only sees people by appointment. So please call our office. I'll drop my information in the chat, the number to call, and my email if necessary. The senator, of course, sends his greetings. He has been in Albany. He just came back down today. He will be going back on Sunday. He's there more than half the week, most of the time. Session is up and running. He's working on different bills to put into legislation to help our community. One such bill would be the bill number S2432, which is the asking the Public Service Commission to consider the economic impact of utility charges and rates, because as we all know,
oh my God,
our utility rates have
unbelievable.
skyrocketed. Yeah, they've skyrocketed within the last, I'm going to say, 6 to 8 months. And the community is feeling it. So we're concerned, and we're asking the Public Service Commission to please take into consideration the economic impact, especially for our seniors who are on a budget and are finding it hard. We have such an increase in residents coming in to ask for assistance, and we're doing everything we can. There are also programs that our office has information on, such as HeartShare. HeartShare has a Heart and Hunger program where if you qualify, if you meet certain income requirements, you can get a gift card that you'll be able to use to purchase groceries.
30 seconds.
Oh, no problem. Sorry. They also have a program where you have you can get up to $200. Energy Share program. You can get $200 in order to help with your utility bills. But if you have any more questions, like I said, I'm gonna drop my information in the chat, and you can call our office. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ari. And also, if you have that information on a flyer version or like one kind of page with all the contact, all those things, please share it with our CEC. We'd love to post it on our community page, because we want to serve our community in all levels. And thank you so much.
No problem, we'll do.
And please keep coming. Definitely come. Adriana Alicia, our wonderful friend and family. Let's go for it.
Hello. Dr. Pate, I promise I typed out this question, so I'll add it to the chat box as soon as I'm done. So a couple of months ago, Nan Eileen Mead, who is the Director of Outreach and Communications at the Center for Educational Equity of Teachers College of Columbia University, that's a long title, made a presentation at CPAC that was specific to foundation aid and FSF respectively. During that meeting, she noted that the formula, the FSF formula has not been updated in 15 years. So there's been no update since 2007, and it doesn't account for the wraparound services that are provided by community school districts, right? Further, she said that the commission is to be appointed and that the commission is made up of 15 members. The appointments are split between the governor, legislative leadership, and the Board of Regents, with one of the main goals of the commission to propose new student funding formulas that are reflective of the current and changing needs, especially those that have shown themselves or deepened themselves due to the COVID-19 pandemic, which is ongoing. My question for anyone here who's able to answer it is, how do these commissions affect the budgetary outcomes of SFF or FSF for our district, if at all?
I'm gonna give you a very general answer to that. With all of these separate commissions that are, and we have quite a few. So to Simone's point, to your point, you constantly tell us, Venus Ketchum constantly tell our community to get involved and to participate in organizations that have these sort of think tanks and commissions around all types of things connected to public education. The recommendations that the commissions develop have to then go to for approval to the place where the budgeting source is. So the commission can come up with, sort of a findings paper, and then that has to be taken to the state or to if it's a city event, to the state or to the federal government. And that is where it gets recognized and incorporated. That's how it gets to impact budget allocations. So I think that one, it's important that these happen because we have our elected officials, we have our community and political base advocates that can amplify the findings and also the recommendations, so findings or recommendations from these separate coalitions. And we have to, as we have already said in this space, we've got to get boots on the ground to the state, to the city and to the state around how monies, and these are our monies, our collective monies, we all are paying taxes, how our monies are being allocated across the city and state of New York. What we are forced to pay for or not pay for. This to me is some of the most courageous reform action that I've seen in a very long time. Our Chancellor Banks sort of adjusting and creating additional weights for schools. This has not happened in, I don't know if it's ever happened. And this is my second career, but I've been in this career for 20 years. Right. And so it's important that we give a lot of air. And Adriana, thank you so very much for always grounding us in policy. You always do this. And I just want to say thank you for that, because it reminds us that in addition to this work we do here together, we have to use the significant weight of us, District 28, to move policy at the state level. So that's the impact, is that they come up, the findings that they present have to then be defended and enforced at the city and state level. That is where the change happens.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I want to give a quick shout out to Principal Hasbury Signal, still in the office. We should give a wait for that to get extra lunch at night. Thank you for being up on stay with us all night, Principal Hasbury. Next we have Cassia. Cassia, and I'm actually on mute now, Cassia.
Hi. I want my. I'm sorry. Could you just give me a minute, please? I have a small issue with my 4-year-old. Just a minute.
No, I'll call you back after. Go for it. I'll keep you on the list. Don't worry about it.
I just want to say I don't get any extra points for that. This is just making the work easier tomorrow. I saw Dr. Payton give me like, go home. Yes, it's easier for me to work from here. So no extra points for me.
I hear you.
Okay, I'm available
I keep
now.
telling her that, like, real strong. I keep saying it.
Go for it.
Okay, I could go ahead, right? All right, thank you.
Yes.
My name is Cassia, and I'm the SLT member and PTA co-president at the Ellington Magnet School at PS 140 Queens. Today, I'm speaking on behalf of myself and my parent community that is in attendance. I want to share with everyone that I'm very proud of the successes and achievements at PS 140Q over the years. It is a place where parents have their voice and choice. I have observed this first-handedly, viewing parent requests and or concerns, resulting in immediate decisions and changes that have been made to support the needs and safety of our school community. I'm reaching out for the support to recognize the positive impact these changes have brought lately. these changes have brought, I'm sorry, lately we have been impacted by an increase of negativity, mostly verbal. We have a zero tolerance policy for aggressive behavior on our school grounds. We do not condone physical altercations between parents within our school community. We are concerned about the small groups of parents who are being aggressive and behaving in a disturbing manner when entering the school building while in front of our elementary school children. Our principal, Ms. Hasbury Signal, and assistant principal, Ms. Elsa Rafi, have been personally attacked by unruly parents as well as many of their hardworking staff. The PS140Q staff have been very vigilant in their many efforts to keep everyone safe and address parent concerns respectfully as the policies outlined by the school. The administration as well as the staff have been very attentive at addressing many parent concerns during our monthly PTA meetings, as they are very supportive of our school community. We are very involved in our choices and selection of participating in assessments. We have an inclusive voice in the decision-making process for our school-wide policies. Each and every one of us has a seat at the table to discuss what is best for our scholars and our community. Please continue to celebrate and acknowledge our amazing unity and hard work. Please remember, as your PTA, we are your first line of defense and we represent all members of the community. Any information that comes from us will be sanctioned by us. If the CEC has any suggestions or guidance, please support us in addressing our concerns. Thank you so much for taking time to listen to me.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Next, we have Yutao Chen. Sorry.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, go for it.
All right, great. Yeah. First of all, my hats off to Dr. Pate, and I don't know how you manage this, but at this hour you're still drinking tea, and hopefully you can get good night's sleep after that. I also want to applaud your great presentation, and that's really great transparency and really awesome information, which was like it's like totally unknown word for us, and for I don't know the rest of the meeting members, but it's totally new information for me. I'm a parent of two, both in District 28. One's in 4th grade, the other one is in 7th grade. All right. So one has 1.0 and the other one's 1.08, if I remember the formula correctly. All right, so my question actually is a little bit related to the formulas. One is actually, we know the formula hasn't changed for 15 years, and we know how well that works. Obviously, that's a very tough question to answer with the information we have, but you were talking about accountability, and is there a way to check, okay, how the existing budget works instead of just adding to whatever we are going to support the temporary shelter or other disadvantaged groups? Is there any plans to think, okay, rethink what might be reconsidered to not to, life is not all about adding things to the budget. It can also be like reconsidering and reprioritize things. So I just want to make that point so that my voice can get heard, and probably someone you can bring the idea or the perspective to whoever is responsible or whoever is in charge, at least into further consideration. So I think that would be really appreciated. The other question is, obviously on the adding side, we're throwing money at problems. Do we know how well they work? Is there a way to get feedback to say, okay, we're spending, if my calculations correct,
30 seconds.
Yeah, that's thank you. So if we're throwing money like $1,000 to the problem, do we really get the what we pay for, and is there a feedback loop so that we can check? So that's my question. And quick, yeah, sorry, I'm really interested.
Sorry, but we would love
in
to
the
give you
process.
time. We would love to give time to answer the question, you know, so
All right, so
if you don't
thank
mind,
you.
we'd appreciate it. Thank you.
So yeah, so here's one of the, I thank you for the checks and balance statement, right? We are principals are required to have the conversation around the budget with their school leadership team as well as UFT within the building. Like there are times during the year that these conversations have to happen. What I can say, sorry, the phone is telling me I have to wear African garb tomorrow for our team meeting. Thank you. Okay. Um, um, what I can incorporate, and I think that this would be a really good thing to do, is a requirement of all schools to have a town hall to really discuss and be transparent around how the budget is being used for the year. And then, provide an opportunity later in the year to sort of check in on where that money went. So school leaders are required to share the comprehensive education plan with the school community. And oftentimes we talk about the budget in connection to that, but can we say it? Can we be honest with each other? That's not always a really clear conversation. So let us say that this is the beginning of a more transparent discourse around the monies and funds that come into schools and how they get used. You can see publicly where the money is allocated. You can publicly see the comprehensive education plan. But I think that I'm going to then for the coming year to put in a mandate for the beginning of the year that budget is discussed in using a platform like a town hall or a parent teacher conference, not a parent teacher conference, a PTA meeting that everyone gets invited to. And we really take the time to walk the budget. I think that would help with accountability. And it would also then open opportunity for, many hands make light work light, right? What is it saying? It's
Make
so
work
late, I
lighter,
can
right?
hardly see.
Yes.
Make
Yes.
work light, right? So if we were to have this open forum conversation, it's a way for multiple stakeholders to say, well, I have a connection with this. Maybe we can use funds for this. And I know that's a lot, right? Like that's a lot, but it's necessary because we have to be empowered, right? Because I don't know who you know and how you can support us moving the needle in a particular way with a particular problem or challenge we have at the school. So thank you for that. The principals on the line are probably like, "What, Dr. Pate? Come on now!" But so hear ye in September. At the very latest in October, we're going to have these conversations. It'll be like a parent teacher conference, but not, sorry, I keep saying parent teacher. It'll be a PTA or PA meeting, town hall, where we will talk in depth about the school budget. You'll see it. You'll be able to ask questions about it. You'll get to ask some questions and get some answers.
Thank you, Dr. Pitt. More transparency. Thank you so much.
Thank
Effie
you.
Zachary.
Good evening, everybody. So I've been coming to CEC District 28 meetings for a few years now. Many people here already know who I am. But tonight I'm here for the first time as your PEP rep. And that's a new position that didn't exist before. The last time I was here, I was a CCHS rep, not the PEP rep. And I want to repeat that. I'm your PEP rep. You don't have you don't really have anyone else. They are the mayor appointees, President Boros, the presidents of the boards have their appointees. But for example, Cherie Gibson, as great as she is, she's Donovan Richards' appointee. If he tells her to vote a certain way, she has to vote that way. So if you want her to vote the other way, it's tough. I'm here completely to represent you. I'm not beholden to anybody else but the CECs in Queens. So keep that in mind. As an example, we had the co-location issues. The mayor appointees, basically, they get marching orders. Please vote for this co-location proposal. We, by state law, and just to repeat a little bit of what's happened, by state law, we need to give Success Academy or any other charter school for that matter, a space. The blue book indicates that there's some space in this building. By the way, that space got created because they revised the blue book thanks to the small class size. So that made it look like there's a lot more space now in the building after they revised the blue book. But I don't want to diverge, like to digress into that. I spoke individually to some of the mayoral candidates. I told them, listen, I've been to this joint public hearing. I've been talking to many people in Queens. Whereas in some cases it makes sense to have co-locations. In this sense, the community spoke so loud and clear, hundreds of people literally coming out, students coming out. You can't ignore an entire community. Would you like to have a neighbor that nobody else in the building wants? You know, like even for Success Academy, do you really want to co-locate in a place where no other school wants you to be there? Let's find another place for you. And I'm glad to say that some of them got swayed that it's not the best co-location proposal. They went to the mayor, they went to the chancellor, and I gave a lot of credit to the chancellor in the last PEP meeting, if anybody attended, that he listened. A lot of people are stubborn. They're like, this is what we want, this is what we need. Just vote, and you know, the community be damned, right? Like, I have the power to make it happen. But apparently we have a mayor and a chancellor who listen to the community. And this is, I think, a great example where they listened, and we should all, I think, acknowledge them, thank them for listening to us. I think it's very important that we foster that relationship with the chancellor, that he knows that we rely on him and he can rely on us. All right. Let me move on to a couple of other quick things.
Effie,
FSF,
I'm
there's a lot I
sorry,
can
but the
talk
time is,
about.
Effie?
The time is up,
I thought you should-
Effie.
Oh, it wasn't 30 seconds?
I forgot.
so
I was listening to you and I forgot to tell you 30 seconds.
Okay, go ahead.
Let me just very quickly say there's a town hall with the chancellor February 7th. CCHS has a town hall. Try to attend that. I'll finish with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Effie, and congratulations. Next, we have Grace Rajendra.
Hi, good evening, everyone.
Good
Yeah,
evening.
a parent of District 28 as well. I just have a scenario. Imagine you have two students. This is high school. And they 2 weeks into school, one of them, 1 month into school, the other. And they did their homework last night. And then the very next morning, and they had a hard time because in New York alone, as of last year, there were 104,000 kids who were homeless, living in poverty. And imagine they did their homework, and then the very next morning, the counselor gives a new schedule. Imagine the mental health and the stress. And we want to keep kids in school. We want to maintain retention. We're not encouraging these kids. This is high school where they get easily stressed or they have other things that may have stressed them at home. How do we fix this? I mean, the mayor has put a lot of funding towards mental health. Can we tap into that and hire more guidance counselors for our kids, for the high schools? I'm very, very concerned because when I raised this concern with my principal, he wasn't very happy with me that my child's schedule was changed until October 3rd when she started school, since in September at the beginning. And one of the things I was told, maybe this is not the right fit for your child, which I find that was very, that's not what I was looking for. But I feel as a citizen and as a parent and as a teacher, that all our kids, every single child, if we're spending this much money on individual kids and we are evaluating each child, then why are we letting some of them fall through the gaps? I feel really, really strongly about this. And I think that we should really advocate for having more help. I think the counselors are overloaded. The larger your school and so many kids, the larger the probability that most of these kids are in your school, and every child, whether they are homeless or in poverty or not, need to come to school not wondering, are they going to change my schedule today? How can we fix this? That's my question.
Yeah, so Oh, okay. I thought I was mute. So in the high school setting, they have semesters, semester break, but I know you're not talking about semester breaks. I think you're talking about program changes, right? And generally speaking, that should be in consultation with the student as well at a high school level. They should not come into the building and have an automatic change, but it does happen. If a teacher leaves or some other challenge occurs, they sometimes will receive, a program change on the spot. I have raised and am raising three amazing young people, all three of which went through the entire continuum of K through 12 in New York City public schools. And high school was challenging for sure. And they have, I agree with you, there are very significant and highly specialized social emotional needs of high schoolers. And we think it's a small thing, a program change, but it's not a small thing. And their work and their effort, having witnessed my own three, they make these negotiations with themselves because they have sort of their peer groups that are pulling at them, and then what they know to be right in terms of getting their work done and really contributing to their success, their future success. And that can be really disheartening. And so it is my hope that in every single school, there is a counselor who they can go to. In every school, there is a guidance counselor, and those who have the additional fundings will sometimes also have, SAPIS counselors and social workers of that kind. And they should be able to access someone in that building. Like that's a question that is asked in terms of compliance of every principal, that every child, look at that beautiful little one. Hi, Taisha. That every child, every young person has a point of contact. And so, yes, talk to your principal, and if you don't get that satisfaction, I say this to our K-8 folk, K-9 in this district, then you contact your district office. And I personally know Dr. Van Ness, um, and you have only to reach out to her. If you're not getting the level of support that you feel your child needs, reach out to your superintendent's office.
Thank you. Principal Hasbury, you had your hand raised to make a comment or on topic or?
I just wanted to just give my thanks, so I could wait until the end
Okay,
if you
sure.
like. Okay.
Sure. Yeah, next. So, and also, Grace, we are here. Thank you for coming to our platform and echoing your sentiments. We are here to listen, also, but also to act, right? And if you would like, our email address is on the chat there. We'll ask our amazing Dorinda Simango to please put it again on the chat feature. You can shoot us an email here, and we can also forward that to the. We don't oversee high schools, but we will definitely listen. Kids are kids. We are parents. We are looking after all children here at some levels, right? So please send us an email if you feel you need to, and we'll forward that to those who need to have that email, and we'll forward it up to people who need to listen to what you're saying, because sometimes this being heard is important, right? And being listened to is important. We'll make sure we send your email to who we have to send it to. So feel free to do so, Grace. Thank you. Last but not least, to sign up to speak is Venus Ketchum. Venus, go for it.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, Simone, you started my time. I just wanted to reintroduce myself for people who don't know me, because I see some responses to my comments in the chat. So I want to make sure everyone's clear who I am. I'm Venus Ketchum. I'm a community education activist, community and parent leader in education. And my son started pre-kindergarten in 2011 at PS 140. At the time, David Norman was the principal. He is now the superintendent of School District 27. I went on to be on the PTA at PS 140. The following year, I was on the SLT at PS 140, as well as joining the SLT at my job. I'm a New York City educator and have been so for over almost 2 decades now, supporting students with IEPs at the high school level and currently at the elementary school level. I've attended CEC consistently since 2011, and then I started attending CECs throughout Queens to bring back best practices to District 28, way before VJ was introduced to the council. I remember the day that you came, VJ, and you sat right beside me, I think.
I sure did.
I used to always be in the audience giving my feedback nice and loud. But I went on to start attending CECs in District 29 and 27 and across the entire borough, as well as in Brooklyn now. I'm in Central Brooklyn. I attend District 16 and District 23 and District 18 in Brooklyn. And I even once drove my car to support a family friend to District 8 in the Bronx. So I've been on Staten Island since the pandemic. I've been able to get on the Zoom and get on almost all CECs except for Manhattan. I haven't tackled Manhattan yet. So I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm a long-standing parent leader who stands on the shoulders of OGs like Vanessa Sparks, who was on the council when I came, Shirley Huntley, Olga Addison, and all the OG Black women, since it is Black History Month, that stood in the face of adversity on the CEC on behalf of all students, not the North or South side. But again, my commitment is always to Queens South and the South side to make sure that our children are thriving and are receiving a high quality, excellent education. And I encourage parents to attend these meetings and voice their concerns as well as their wins and successes of their school. So I'm glad to see parents that I've spoken to personally on this Zoom tonight. And I hope that you come back and that you're not shy and that you sign up in the chat to speak. So I just want to be clear that I've been doing this for a very long time. I've attended fair student fundings in every district every year since 2011. So I'm very aware of how it works.
30 seconds.
And I'm committed that every parent at least knows 25% of what I know. I have something called my top 5 to thrive: SLT, CEC, PTA, UFT, and DOE workshops, as well as your Queensborough president or your borough president's workshops, so that you can become fully empowered and informed and ensure a quality education for your child and share that information with others. Thank you.
Thank you, Venus. Principal Hasbury.
Thank you. That's hard to follow up this late at night, Venus. Thank you so much. We've done a lot of work together. I just wanted to thank everyone for allowing that opportunity for my PTA executive board to share what it is that we're experiencing. And we, on behalf of myself, the administration, AP El Sarafi, Dr. Pate, we've had at length discussions as to what plans we're putting in place to address the crisis that is happening. And it is a crisis. And every day we show up, we live in the work. The seat is hot, the seat is hot, right? And every day we're looking for new ways to reach our families. You know, sometimes you can't say good morning with a smile on your face when groceries is costing $350. So we understand and we try to give grace and we try to support, and we're still embedded in the work. It's about the work. If you notice inside the Zoom here, we have quite a few of our teachers, quite a few of our parents that consistently always come to CEC. And I've sat next to Venus for many, many years. And so thank you for taking the time and point out to them where are some areas that we can build some additional partnerships, how we can address the needs of the community, and how we can have a true depiction as to the amazing things that are happening here at PS 140. And it's all about the work. So whenever, I know VJ, you're attached to our school, whenever you want to come on over down the block and walk on in, unexpected, uninvited, it's always a standing invitation. Dr. Pate, I know that you're gonna come on by, but I get no brownie points for sitting here late at night. I love my job, and this was easier than doing this at home. So thank you for having given me this opportunity, and thank you for everyone to supporting us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I want to say too publicly here too that you have been one of the principals who have always seen consistently. And I don't want no cookies also, but I'm just being very honest about this, you know. Venus is one of the faces, Simone was one of the faces, and also yours was one of the faces in the front row. You were also in the far left, and Simone was in the center with Venus in the back, right there, in the middle right there. Yeah. Always at the CEC meetings. And this is our faces who are consistent. So I want to elevate that. And thank you for always being present. It's important. It makes a difference when the principals When the principals join the room and they're sitting here listening with their families, it makes a huge difference. And we have SLT members, we have PTA members, we have PCs, we have all of you in here, and you are leading by example and this notice. Thank you. Thank you. Ron, you signed up after the fact, but we're going to give you a free pass this time, but next time sign up before 8 o'clock, please. Ron, Britt, go for it.
You got it. Definitely. Thank you so much. Ron Britt, bring greetings from the Jamaica NAACP and specifically the Education Committee. And good evening to the CEC, and good evening, Dr. Pate. When I saw you open up the meeting and start presenting and keep going, I said to myself, wait, she's giving the presentation? So you threw me for a loop there. But nevertheless, I do have, 3 things that I just wanted to share, and things that I've heard from various SLTs and so forth and so on. And so real quick, one of the things was surrounding the mid-year adjustments where, as you know, schools that with the projected enrollments and budgets compared with their actual enrollments and needs, and schools which ultimately show a deficit, they usually receive quicker treatment, with Central kind of asking to take back the funds immediately, and in cases where it's not possible, putting the offending, quote unquote, offending school on a close watch or in a single or multi-year payment plan, depending on, the amount involved. So, and anyone on the SLT knows that the clawback, is instantaneous, but when the DOE owes funds to schools, you might have to wait till hell freezes over, to receive due funds. So that needs to be addressed. But schools that face the rollover deficit shouldn't, really, merely be scolded and kind of put on a payment plan. We need to examine the causes for those deficits and the school's performance, basically to determine if the funding is adequate and proper, and what adjustments may be needed going forward. And secondly, each school needs to be funded for fair student funding for the foundation for a principal, school secretary, AP, parent coordinator, and a social worker, which would obviously eliminate the funding that's, currently allocated, separately under 2 different SAMs. And lastly, the enrollment projections, it's such a joke. It should be put in the hands of the people closest to it. And we need to get rid of the enrollment projections that are provided, to schools by the DOE, by the Office of School Enrollment by OSC, right? The DOE, the OSC, proposed enrollment projections should be required to obtain principal and school level SLT agreement before being finalized. And, in any cases where the OSC and the school can't agree, a decision from, the supers, in my opinion, whose role it is already stipulated, so, that would suffice. So, I'll leave it there, but, those were the 3 things that, I just wanted to share and see if you had any thoughts on, and bring some greetings. And thank you so much, BJ, for allowing me to speak. And good night, everybody.
Good night. Yeah, and thank you for hosting that town hall recently, Ron, post Success Academy. Thank you for organizing. That was very powerful. We have a lot of great leaders there, and it's always good to hit things at their various levels. And I thank you for your work or what you're doing, and keep on being partners with us. And we are partners with you and your team, and we are here to uplift this community one student at a time. Thank you, Ron.
Thank you.
Okay, you were yes, Dr. Pate.
I hope I'm not muted. I'm
Oh,
literally
I can
signing
hear
in.
you.
Perfect. 598. Ron, would you add that question? I was trying to capture your questions. Can you add that to the chat? I want to definitely put it in the note catcher. And anyone else who has questions that you want us to really elevate. I think that this is sort of this is a really big question that a couple of big questions you asked. I will publicly say how very thankful I am to our current chancellor, and also former chancellor did the same thing, which was to hold schools harmless for register losses due to the pandemic, and we got a chance to have that happen, and that I promise you, it made all the difference in the world for our schools. It made all the difference in the world. And so we're very thankful for that. But to your point, it gets really difficult when after the January 31st accounting, and that's our special education accounting, that's a different, a federal fiscal year change. When that comes through, sometimes it can be devastating um, to a school if their numbers are not where they should be. And so the holding harmless over the last few years has really been able to support schools and just continuing forward. We've got to have schools in our district that have to um, they have to ask for a reprieve every single year. They have an issue every single year. And over the last couple of years has been they've been able to take a deep breath and not have to sacrifice critical staff to cover a shortfall in their budget. So, Ron, to your point, that is such a big question and a consideration. One that we've thankfully they've addressed through these sort of these sort of 11th hour saves that we've been able to get. But we really should think about how do we make that a more sustainable practice across our system. Um, in order to support and protect schools who may have registered challenges, but you still have to provide the same services, whether you have the money or not. You're required by law to provide every service. I also agree with you around some of the maybe creating some centrally funded positions so that can be taken off of the district's, off of the school's budget. That's a super complicated conversation, but I'm adding that to my note catcher to send back to our senior partners, financial partners. So if it's not in the chat, please just make sure it's in the chat. And anyone else who has a question or an idea, I'd love. We have think tanks all the time. Put your idea. I'm going to personally capture it. VJ, if please have your team. I can't copy the chat. So if you can please make sure I can get a copy of the chat,
Will do.
the transcript, so that I can elevate these questions and also suggestions.
Will do. Thank you so much. So, folks, we have reached the end of our meeting now. Before we end rapidly, I would like to say that I want to say two words: Tyree Nichols. And as we are in Black History Month here, I want to elevate and escalate that all lives are important. And brutality in all levels is not okay. And we as a community, we as a state, a city, a nation, that we have to take this to heart and do what we have to do, and to make sure that we do our part to stop brutality in all levels, every day, any day, anywhere and everywhere. So I just want to end with that and ask you to just, in your own personal space, not here, do a moment of silence for him and his family as they go through this tough time in your own time. With that being said, it's 9:27 p.m. I thank all of you for being here. To our council members, you're amazing. I want to thank all of you, council members, this team, the work that we've been doing, the tireless work that all of you have been doing, staying up, meetings, this, that. It's nonstop. To all the council members, we are grateful to you for all the work that you do. Dr. Pate, you and your amazing team, thank you for leading us. Thank you for being that inspiration for all of us. We are so lucky to have you as our leader, as at the helm in this district. To Sonia Rowena, who's not here today, but I always chant her glories, because guess what? She has set a platform and a standard beyond that we are grateful for. So Sonia, we love you. To everyone else, all the parents, all the principals, everyone who's on board tonight, please keep coming to these meetings, spread the word. We are going to be planning right now our principal legislative breakfast, which we are doing, getting dates organized, and also in those spaces we uplift and we elevate the parent coordinators, who are very important in this community also, who needs a raise, by the way. We are advocating for them too. So yeah, we are working, the CEC is doing its work here, and also to all the parents, we are here for you. You put us in these positions to fight for you. So please reach out to the CEC if there's anything we can do for you. Our email address is there. To our amazing administrative assistant, Dorinda C. Mungle. She doesn't say much, but she's always behind the scenes doing her thing. Thank you for all the work that you do, Dorinda. We are grateful. The time now is 9:29 p.m. and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Good
And
night,
if anyone
everyone.
wants to stay for our business meeting, it will start promptly at 9:35. So we can, if you want to stay back for that meeting, you can listen in as we discuss business, but you cannot speak. Dr. Pate, I forgot to call you. I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
No. We're good.
We're good. Okay, good.
Wishing everyone a beautiful, beautiful night. If you need me, I'll jump back in, obviously, but I'm gonna probably jump off.
Yeah, please.
But again, if you need me, I'll jump right back in.
Totally.
Gonna try to attack some email now.
It never ends.
Everyone, thank you.